They laugh at the old man in the wheelchair, his faded jacket, his silence, his scars. Just a relic, they think. A joke. But stick around. That relic is Colonel Jack Barnes, the man who built the A-10 Thunderbolt, designed it to bring pilots home alive. The teens jeer, but what they didn't know, his grandson is airborne. Captain James Barnes, call sign Ghost 1-7, breaks protocol mid-show. A knife-edge salute slices the sky history, screaming through turbine roar. They mocked a legend. Now the legend roars back. And when truth dives from above, respect won't be requested, it'll be demanded. Let us know where you're watching from, and what time you found this. We read every single comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. Captain James Barnes grips the control stick of his A-10 Thunderbolt II, his knuckles whitening as teenage laughter carries across the airfield. Through the scratched canopy, he watches them mock his grandfather, Colonel Jack Hogfather Barnes, their smartphones raised in cruel amusement at the old man's patch-covered flight jacket. The morning sun glints off his aircraft's titanium armor, the very design his grandfather had fought to perfect decades ago. "Look at that old timer!" One teen's voice cuts through the radio chatter. "Probably just some wannabe who watched Top Gun too many times." More laughter follows, spreading like poison through the crowd. Captain Barnes feels his jaw clench, the silver wings pin on his chest, his grandfather's original Air Force wings, suddenly feeling heavier than the 30mm cannon beneath his cockpit. The airshow coordinator's voice crackles through his headset. Captain Barnes' standard demonstration pattern approved. Maintain 3,000 feet, no deviations. But something darker stirs in his chest as another wave of snickers reaches his ears. His grandfather stands alone now, shoulders slightly hunched, weathered hands clasping his cane. Without warning, Captain Barnes pushes the throttle forward. The twin engines roar to life, drowning out the coordinator's protests. "Tower, this is Ghost 1-7 executing tribute pattern." His fingers dance across the control's muscle memory from countless missions taking over. The A-10 leaps forward, its distinctive silhouette casting a shadow over the stunned crowd. He banks hard, far closer to the viewing area than regulations allow. The teenagers' phones drop as the thunderous sound of freedom drowns their mockery. Captain Barnes executes a perfect knife-edge pass, the maneuver his grandfather had pioneered during Vietnam gun runs. The massive aircraft seems to dance, defying its reputation as an ugly beast of burden. Captain Barnes returned to approved pattern immediately. The tower's command falls on deaf ears as he pulls into a vertical climb, the move showcasing every innovative design element his grandfather had fought to incorporate. The teen's earlier target now stands straight-backed, a knowing smile playing across his weathered features. As social media explodes with Monsieur Hogfather legacy videos of his unauthorized display, Captain Barnes knows his career might end today. But watching his grandfather's eyes shine with pride as the crowd finally recognizes the living legend in their midst, he realizes some prices are worth paying. Type legacy if you believe our heroes deserve more than mockery. The Silver Wings pin catches the sun as Captain Barnes brings his aircraft in for landing, his mind racing through the consequences ahead. Yet one question burns brighter than his career concerns. How many other quiet giants walk among us, their sacrifices hidden beneath weathered jackets and modest smiles, in a world obsessed with flash and trending topics, who will stand for those who stood for us all? The engines wind down, but the roar of social media outrage at the teens' behavior grows. Hogfather legacy trends nationwide within hours, accompanying viral videos of his tribute flight. Captain Barnes steps down from his cockpit, knowing his defiance will cost him dearly. But watching his grandfather now surrounded by respectful onlookers, some wiping tears as they learn of the colonel's contributions to aviation history, he realizes some battles aren't fought with bullets, but with bold statements that force the world to remember its heroes. Share this if you believe every hero deserves their moment to soar. Hogfather Legacy. The question isn't whether Captain Barnes was right to break protocol. It's why it took such a dramatic gesture to make people see the giant standing quietly among them. As he walks toward his grandfather, both their sets of wings gleaming in the morning sun, he wonders how many more forgotten heroes need someone to help them take flight one last time. Captain James Barnes methodically worked through his pre-flight checklist, each item triggering memories of afternoons spent in his grandfather's study. The walls of Colonel Jack Hogfather Barnes's sanctuary had been a testament to stubborn dedication. Rejected A-10 Thunderbolt Taru. So too designs papering every surface like battle scars of bureaucratic warfare. The morning sun caught James's wings pin, and his jaw clenched. Those teenagers' laughter still echoed in his ears, mocking the old man who'd fought harder for his pilots than anyone would ever know. Tower. This is Ghost Lead, requesting final clearance. James spoke into his mask, his voice steady, despite the storm brewing inside. Through the canopy, he could see the gathering crowd, their faces turned upward expectantly. None of them knew the truth about the A-10's birth, about how Colonel Jack Hogfather Barnes had stood alone against waves of brass who wanted their sleek, pretty fighters. The memory surfaced like a depth charge, Grandpa's weathered hands tracing the A-10's distinctive silhouette voice, gravelly with emotion. They wanted beauty, Jimmy. I gave them a beast that brings our boys home. James's fingers brushed his grandfather's original wings pin, now nestled next to his own. The weight of legacy pressed heavier than G-force. Research papers scattered across his grandfather's desk flashed through James's mind. Survival rates, combat effectiveness, studies, pilot testimonials. The A-10 wasn't just ugly. It was deliberately, defiantly practical. Every ungainly angle, every redundant system represented Colonel Barnes's unwavering conviction that pilot survival mattered more than aesthetic appeal. James's hand trembled slightly as he adjusted his throttle. The airshow's prescribed routine suddenly felt like a betrayal, a sanitized display that ignored the aircraft's true purpose and the man who'd fought to make it real. Studies had proven his grandfather right. The A-10's rugged design had saved countless pilots. Yet here they were reducing it to mere entertainment. Remember what you told me about institutional momentum, Grandpa? James whispered to himself, recalling late-night conversations about military procurement politics. His grandfather had explained how organizations resist change, prefer flash over function. The same mindset that had initially rejected the A-10 was alive and well manifesting in these air shows that valued spectacle over substance. Social media posts from the morning's incident began trending. Old pilots matter. Respect the Hogfather. James's chest tightened as he saw his grandfather's nickname becoming a punchline. The same military culture that had tried to stop the A-10's development was now allowing its creator to be ridiculed. Have you ever watched something precious being misunderstood type legacy if you felt the pain of seeing important truths ignored? Through his canopy, James spotted his grandfather sitting alone in his wheelchair, separated from the VIP section. Colonel Barnes's gnarled hands rested on his lap, still bearing scars from his own combat days. Experiences that had driven his relentless push for pilot protection. The distance between him and the other dignitaries spoke volumes about how institutions forget their heroes. Recent budget meetings flooded James's memory. Younger officers dismissing the A-10 as outdated, pushing for newer, flashier alternatives. They were repeating the same arguments his grandfather had faced decades ago, proving that the hidden problem wasn't just about one aircraft or one man. It was about a system that consistently prioritized appearance over effectiveness. James's grip tightened on the controls as he prepared to take off. The prescribed routine felt increasingly hollow, a betrayal of everything the A-10 represented. His grandfather's voice echoed in his mind. "Sometimes, son, the right path isn't the pretty one." The weight of decision pressed against his chest, harder than any G-force he'd ever experienced. The thunder of nearby jets couldn't drown out the truth. Becoming crystal clear in James's mind, this demonstration would either perpetuate the problem or become a moment of revelation. His grandfather's legacy, the A-10's true story, and the deeper issue of institutional values hung in the balance, waiting for his next move. Captain James Barnes stares at his phone, his hands trembling as the Touch a Rogue Flyer hashtag explodes across social media. The unauthorized maneuvers he'd executed at the air show just hours ago are now viral footage with aviation experts dissecting every second of his tribute flight. His chest tightens as he watches the view counter climb past 1 million. The very attention he'd sought to bring to his grandfather's legacy is now threatening to end his own career. In his office at the base, Captain James Barnes methodically arranges his grandfather's medals beside his own wings, pin-touching each one with reverence. A notification buzzes. Air Force Command has issued a preliminary statement about investigating the incident. The word incident makes his jaw clench. They don't understand. They can't see that this was about more than just protocol. The base commander's voice crackles over his phone. "Captain James Barnes, report immediately." The same commanding tone that once made him stand straighter now sends a chill down his spine. Through his office window, he watches ground crews securing his A-10, perhaps for the last time. The aircraft sits silent, its iconic cannon, the voice that had roared his grandfather's story to the crowds, now muted. His fellow pilots avoid eye contact as he walks across the hangar. Captain James Barnes catches fragments of their whispered conversations. Career suicide, court-martial. What was he thinking? The weight of his wings pin seems to double with each step. He'd worn it proudly this morning, just like his grandfather had. Now it feels like a burden, a reminder of everything he might lose. CNN's coverage plays on a breakroom television. In an unprecedented breach of air show safety protocols, an Air Force pilot's unauthorized demonstration has raised serious questions about command structure and oversight. Captain James Barnes watches himself bank through maneuvers that mirror his grandfather's famous combat patterns, the ones that had saved so many lives. The footage cuts to concerned aviation safety experts, their grave expressions matching the growing knot in his stomach. His phone buzzes again. A message from his grandfather. Captain James Barnes's hands shake as he reads, "Jimmy, what have you done?" The disappointment in those 4 words hits harder than any official reprimand. The Hogfather had always taught him that true heroes follow orders, serve quietly, put the mission first. In trying to honor that legacy, he'd perhaps betrayed its most fundamental lesson. A junior officer approaches with an official envelope. "Sir, from command." Captain James Barnes opens it slowly, already knowing what it contains. His flight status suspended. His wings pin, the one that matched his grandfather's, would soon be removed. The very symbol he'd tried to honor would become the price of his tribute. The base public affairs officer appears at his door, her expression grim. "Sir, the footage is trending worldwide. Rogue Flyer is #1. The press is calling you a maverick, a rebel pilot. Some are praising your dramatic protest against military bureaucracy." Captain James Barnes feels sick. They've twisted his tribute into something else entirely missing the point about quiet heroism he'd tried to make. Through his office window, he watches as his grandfather's car pulls up to the base gate. Colonel Jack Hogfather Barnes, who'd never sought recognition for his acts of valor, who'd taught him that true service needs no audience, has come to witness the consequences of his grandson's misguided tribute. Captain James Barnes touches his wings, pin one last time, understanding now that in trying to force recognition of his grandfather's quiet heroism, he'd forgotten its most essential quality: humility. Type honor in the comments if you've ever watched pride become a fall. The sun sets over the airfield, casting long shadows across the A-10's distinctive silhouette. Captain James Barnes stands at attention, awaiting the formal review that will determine his fate. The brart of the cannon that had seemed so righteous this morning now echoes in his memory like a warning he'd chosen to ignore. Sometimes he realizes the greatest tribute to a hero is simply following their example of quiet, dutiful service. I need to clarify something important. In this case, Captain James Barnes appears to be the protagonist, not the antagonist, as he's performing an act of tribute and defiance against those who disrespected his grandfather. According to the provided instructions, I need to tell the story from the antagonist's perspective. Before proceeding, I need to know: 1. Should I create an antagonist character like an airshow director or senior officer who opposes James Barnes's tribute? 2. Or would you like to provide a different story memory where the central conflict is driven by a clear antagonist? This will ensure I deliver a narrative that properly follows the instructions of telling the story from the antagonist's perspective while maintaining narrative coherence and emotional impact. Please clarify which approach you'd prefer, and I'll craft the appropriate narrative section accordingly. Note, while I'll use Captain James Barnes as the antagonist, I'll maintain complete focus on his perspective and emotional journey through his realization about respect and authority. The afternoon sun blazes against Captain James Barnes's cockpit as he guides the A-10 to its final landing. His hands, still trembling from the unauthorized maneuvers, grip the controls with diminishing certainty. The rumble of the engines, once a symphony of defiance, now feels hollow in his chest. Through the canopy, he watches the gathering crowd, their phones still raised, Barnes Rebel, trending across social media. His grandfather's wings pin weighs heavily against his chest, the metal no longer gleaming with righteous purpose, but dulled by the weight of consequence. Captain Barnes, you are hereby grounded pending investigation. The base commander's voice crackles through his headset, each word hammering home the reality of his choices. James removes his helmet slowly, every movement deliberate, as the magnitude of his actions settles in his stomach like lead. The teenagers who had mocked his grandfather earlier now cluster around the elderly man, their faces animated with genuine interest. Colonel Jack Hogfather Barnes speaks softly, his weathered hands gesturing toward the A-10's impressive frame, and James feels something crack inside his chest. "I thought I was defending your honor. Grandpa," James whispers to himself, his throat tight. "But you never needed my defense, did you? You had something I didn't understand until now." The airshow director approaches security team in tow, but pauses at the sight before him. The teenagers are pulling out notebooks, actually taking notes as Colonel Barnes explains the intricacies of close air support missions. One of them spots James and nudges the others, their previous mockery replaced with something that looks remarkably like shame. James touches his wings pin, his grandfather's wings pin, one last time before unpinning it. The metal catches the light, and in its reflection, he finally sees the truth. Respect isn't commanded through spectacular displays of power, but earned through consistent, quiet dignity. His grandfather never needed roaring engines to prove his worth. His impact was made in gentle words and patient teachings. "Sir," James addresses the base commander, his voice steady, despite the tremor in his hands. "I understand now. True authority isn't about making people look up. It's about giving them a reason to want to." The A-10's shadow passes overhead one final time, cast by another pilot taking it back to the hangar. James watches it go, understanding at last that his grandfather's legacy isn't in the machines he flew or the missions he completed, but in the lives he touched without fanfare or recognition. Drop 2 if you've learned that real heroes don't need to prove themselves. The crowd disperses slowly, but the teenagers linger, now asking Colonel Barnes to sign their notebooks. James stands at attention, accepting the approaching security detail, knowing his career will face severe consequences. Yet watching his grandfather's eyes light up as he shares his stories, James realizes he's witnessed something more powerful than any aerial display: the quiet triumph of dignity over spectacle. Sometimes, James reflects removing his flight suit for what might be the last time. The greatest act of respect isn't in grand gestures, but in letting others shine in their own light. Share this story if you've ever discovered that true strength lies in humility. The wing's pin finds its new home in a display case alongside his grandfather's original decorations, no longer a symbol of authority to be wielded, but a reminder that real heroes don't demand respect. They inspire it through their quiet, unwavering dedication to something greater than themselves.